Life after divorce for men can feel pretty bleak. And a lot of that bleakness comes from this sense, this feeling that you need your ex-wife's forgiveness in order to actually move forward. In this video, I'm going to show you why you absolutely do not need your ex-wife's forgiveness in order to move on from divorce. In the process, I'm going to help you understand how to forgive yourself and finally start moving on. I'm Rachael Sloan. I am the creator of Better Beyond Divorce. It is a unique coaching program that is designed specifically to help men move past divorce, let go of the past, heal the wounds, and move forward into a fuller, richer life beyond their divorce. I am a master NLP practitioner and a certified life coach, and it's my intention on this channel and in these videos to support you as much as I can, the same way that I support my clients. Make sure you stick around to the end of this video because I'm also going to share a simple and effective tool for cultivating self-forgiveness. And as always, I love to hear from you guys. So please, whether it's to share your story, give me some feedback on this video, or just say hi, leave a message for me in the comments. All right, so life after divorce for men can be difficult. And we talk about this a lot, you guys, but part of that reason is that most divorces are filed by women, which means that most men didn't choose the divorce, didn't want the divorce, and are being blamed for the divorce. And that is where this whole concept of forgiveness comes in. When your ex-wife has been blaming you for the divorce and giving you her whole litany of reasons why you're getting divorced, it's natural to feel like you need her forgiveness in order to move on, in order to heal. But there's a real flaw in thinking that happens here. I mean, you wouldn't go to your mechanics looking for a pizza. You wouldn't go to a lawyer's office when you need a tooth filled. And you don't go to Mexico looking for pizza. Although I have to say, I do happen to love a particular pizza place in Oaxaca, but you get the point. You don't go somewhere that doesn't offer the thing that you need. And yet here you go looking to your ex-wife, seeking from her forgiveness that she has no intention of giving you. Why do we humans get so caught up in trying to get something from people who have no intention of giving it to us? Well, it's really quite a natural thing that you want your ex's forgiveness. On an evolutionary level, if we look at our human history, for most of that human history, if we were rejected, if we were abandoned, if we were kicked out of our family, left by our partner, we were in pretty dire straits. I mean, again, I say this a lot, but no fangs, no claws, not much hair. We're not really very well equipped to survive on our own outside of our societies. Rejection and abandonment for most of human history have been associated with death. And so the primitive parts of our brain, our limbic system, which manages a lot of our emotional responses, still associates any sign of rejection or abandonment with death. Now, your ex-wife walking around with resentment and anger and blaming you, all of those stories in her head, that's not going to kill you. Her telling that to everyone also not going to kill you. But that part of your brain doesn't know that. This is also a big part of the reason that divorce itself can feel so terrifying. It can feel like such a life and death thing because that part of your brain, that emotional part of your brain, really truly does see it that way. And if that weren't enough, we also have a lifetime of social conditioning piled on top of it, right? We have all of this cultural messaging talking about what it means to be a man and what it means to be a husband and what it means to be married. Right? Marriage is forever. It is a man's job to be the provider, the protector, the head of the family. And yeah, maybe some of these ideas are being challenged in our society right now, but for most of us, we still really hold pretty deeply onto what it means to be a man, what it means to be a husband, and what it means to be married. So with all of that societal messaging, when you look at your divorce, when you look at the end of your marriage, and especially when you listen to your ex-wife telling you all the reasons it's your fault, it's no wonder that you have thoughts about yourself like, I failed at this. I'm a bad husband. I'm a bad father. I'm a bad person even, or maybe just this sense that there's just something wrong with me. I'm a man. I was married and I did not do the things that society tells me married men are supposed to do. I didn't keep my marriage together. I couldn't keep it together. So naturally, when you have this experience, when you have this feeling of rejection, and then all of these self-critical thoughts, of course, you want to go and find a resolution, but you want to undo it. And you go seeking your ex's forgiveness. What do you do in that process? When I talk to you guys, you tell me all kinds of things. You find that you just can't let it go. Even if she's moved on, you can't quite, right? Even if she has a new partner, you can't quite let it go. You find yourself reaching out, maybe explaining all the things you've learned. I figured out I did X, Y, and Z wrong, and you're right. Maybe I wasn't totally emotionally available, but look at me now. I'm owning my mistakes. I'm taking responsibility for what went wrong. You're asking her to acknowledge that and forgive it. And when she doesn't, when she's just like, yeah, that's nice, good for you, or ignores you completely, it's devastating because you're trying to fix that rejection that feels like life and death to that more primitive limbic system part of your brain. And you're desperately trying to get away from that inner voice of self-doubt that says, you're a bad husband, you're a bad person, you failed at this. So you keep seeking. And when that doesn't work, when that anxiously seeking her forgiveness doesn't get her forgiveness, well, then the fear really kicks in that maybe this is never going to go away. Maybe you're always going to feel this horrible. And that's when you tend to get angry. That anger is always secondary to fear. And anger can create all sorts of complications in your relationship with your ex-wife, especially if you're trying to co-parent. The whole time that all of this is going on, that you're seeking her forgiveness and either being anxious about it or getting upset or maybe even depressed about it, the whole time you're going to Mexico for pizza. And you're not going to my good pizza place either, but you're going to the wrong place. She is not the one who needs to give you forgiveness. It's you. It is your brain. It is your thoughts that are creating this pain for you. And of course they are, right? It's coming from the limbic system's association of rejection with death. It's coming from a lifetime of societal messaging telling you what it means to be a man and a husband and be married. Ultimately, it's not her forgiveness that you need. It is your own thoughts that have to change in order for you to start to feel better. And the good news is this is something you can do. Those thoughts about yourself can be changed, regardless of where they came from. And it starts with getting curious about what your brain is doing. What is your brain making this divorce mean about you? And how is it specifically that you would get to think and feel if she gave you forgiveness? When we focus on getting forgiveness from outside of ourselves, when we think we need it from another person, we neglect our own ability to give that forgiveness, to give that validation and compassion to ourselves. Instead, we stay spinning up here in our brains, saying all kinds of cruel and painful things to ourselves, judging ourselves in ways that, frankly, we would probably never judge another person. And the saddest part about all of this is that if you do get what you're looking for, if you do get forgiveness from her, it doesn't actually solve your problem. It's only a temporary relief. Whenever we give away our self-worth, whenever we give the power to somebody else to determine our worth, we have to prove it to them again and again and again. When your brain is practicing these thoughts over and over about you, any forgiveness from her is just going to be like a Band-Aid. It's a temporary pill. It makes you feel better for a minute, but it doesn't make those thoughts go away. The only way to break free from this cycle is to give yourself the forgiveness and the validation that you're looking for. And you do that by intentionally managing the way you think about yourself. When you start to do that, you can stop going to Mexico for pizza and you can stop looking for forgiveness from your ex-wife. So you can see that you don't actually need your ex-wife's forgiveness. You don't need it to move on. Life after divorce and the way that you experience your life after divorce, that is determined by the way you think, by your thoughts about yourself and the thoughts that you carry forward with you. And you have much greater control over that than you might think. So I told you I was going to give you a simple and effective tool, a strategy to start working on self-forgiveness. And that strategy is all about developing compassion for the person that you were during your marriage. Moving forward into your life after divorce, what holds a lot of men back is the beliefs about who they were in the marriage and their regrets about the ways that they acted, the things that they did or didn't do, and the choices that they made. So the first step to actually forgiving yourself is developing a little compassion for yourself. And you've got to start looking honestly at your actions and really trying to understand them instead of just beating yourself up for them. So there is a basic premise of coaching that I'm going to share with you, and I want you to embrace this as a strategy, as a process of self-inquiry. The premise of coaching is that behind every action is a positive intention. If that were true, I don't care if you believe it or not. If it were true, how would you make sense of the things that you did in the past? And I'm going to give you a little bit of context for this. So when I say that behind every action is a positive intention, I am not saying that every action is good. I'm not saying every action is right. And I'm not saying it was the best decision you could have made at the time. I'm saying that if we understood the entirety of what you were thinking and feeling and hearing internally, your internal experience, it would make sense that you acted the way you did. You didn't make your choices because you're bad, because you're crazy, because there's something pathologically wrong with you. Human actions, human decisions always make sense if we understand what that person is actually experiencing internally. So usually that positive intention behind an action we don't like, usually it is seeking protection or belonging. Those are our two basic human needs, and they are very deeply connected. Right? As children, our whole focus is on how do I stay safe and how do I get love, right? How do I get a sense of belonging and acceptance from the people around me? Human connection for most of human history has been very closely linked to human survival. This is why we are hardwired for connection. It is why it is so important to us to feel connected to one another, and why feeling isolated is so devastating. For most of our evolutionary history, isolation and death were very closely linked. So the desire to protect yourself and the desire to seek belonging, those are both very primal, very powerful needs. And so many of the actions we take that we don't like are actually driven by one of those two things. For instance, if you regret that you withdrew from conflict, that you didn't engage your ex-wife when things were wrong, that your reaction was to pull back, to withdraw, to hide, why were you doing that? You were likely doing that. The positive intention behind withdrawal was to protect yourself, and probably to protect yourself from painful emotions. It could also be to protect yourself from sharing emotions. Remember all that societal messaging that says men are supposed to be manly and protectors and providers. That also means that men aren't supposed to be weak. They're not supposed to cry. They're not supposed to be sad. They're certainly not supposed to be afraid. So for a lot of men, the idea of showing those emotions, of letting somebody know that you feel those things, is very, very frightening. It feels very vulnerable and very risky. Again, thanks to our societal messaging, thanks to our cultural narrative about a man's job and what makes a man good. So it's very common to see that men withdraw or avoid conflict or emotional conversations. You might also regret yelling, getting angry. Well, anger is fear. Anger is always secondary to fear. And often when anger takes the form of yelling, it's because you don't feel understood. You don't feel heard. You don't feel seen. You don't feel appreciated. And guess what? As a human being, that's pretty terrifying, because if you're not heard, and if you're not understood, and if you're not appreciated, you are very close to being rejected or abandoned. So that triggers some very primal levels of fear, which can then easily turn into anger. And that anger is you. It's you reaching out, desperately trying to be heard, to be seen, to be understood and appreciated, so that you aren't rejected and abandoned. And of course, we know when we take a step back that those actions, like the yelling and the withdrawing, they might backfire completely. They could very well be what triggered some of the conflicts between you, or at least contributed to those conflicts that actually did end up in an ultimate experience of rejection. Just because the action you took then isn't the action you wished you had taken, doesn't mean that there wasn't a positive intention behind it. If you can start to look for that positive intent and understand your choices in the past through that lens, that will help you start to forgive yourself. Because instead of seeing someone who's bad or wrong or mean or sick or just basically off in some way, right? Not good enough, not worthy, you're going to start to see somebody who's afraid, somebody who's in pain, somebody who is trying to stay safe or feel connected. And you'll start to have compassion for that person, for the you that you were in the past. When you start to feel a little compassion for yourself, that opens the floodgates to self-forgiveness. I hope that you found this video helpful and that you have a better sense of how to forgive yourself after divorce. And I also hope that you understand that life after divorce as a man does not have to be bad. Your future and what's possible for you does not hinge on your ex-wife's forgiveness. It hinges on you learning how to intentionally explore and manage your thoughts about yourself. And they're not thoughts you chose, right? They're thoughts that you got from our evolutionary history that your limbic system is offering up. And they're thoughts that you got from our cultural narrative. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe to the channel. Please turn on notifications. I put new content out every week, and I would love to see you here in the future. Thank you for watching.